Okay, well, hello. There's nobody live watching yet, but I'm here with an ink guy, and we're going to talk. We've got basically three topics we wanted to get into today: daily use pens, when not to review a pen, and the future of our channels. And oh, now we're up. I don't know if you can see how many people are on.
No, I don't see any of that.
Okay, we're up to 7. I usually get between 20 to 30. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Adam. I mostly review inks, sometimes papers, very, very rarely pens. So it's not the exciting part of all of this. And I've been doing that for a few years.
And Miss Marilyn Darling is here. I don't know if you see the comments either.
I see when you put them up. That's it.
Okay. All right. So we got a few people. We've got India and Australia represented. And Texas. All right. Well, we're here. We're just going to talk about a couple of things. Our idea was we would discuss each of these topics ourselves, and then we would open it up to audience questions. Does that sound about like what we agreed to?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first topic that we talked about was we were going to talk about daily use pens. And I guess I'll start because I think everybody here knows that I'm a big fan of the Lamy 2000. In the summer, I give my Lamy 2000 a break, and I just do a bunch of different pens as my daily writer. So right now I'm using an Aurora 88 as my daily writer. And usually during school, I like a pen that I can just cap and uncap and just like this, so I can just quick jot notes and then go on and do my thing. And the Lamy 2000 just turned out to be exceptional because it feels right in my hand, and I like how it writes. It just looks good on the page. So how about, what thoughts do you have?
Well, a lot during the year. I have pens that are rotating for whatever ink is being reviewed. And one of my daily writers that's usually going is the Pilot Custom 823. During the summer, I switch from that. I'll usually switch over to the Lamy 2000 because it's a great pen. It's just not the pen for me during the school year. So I tend to do the opposite of you in a lot of that. But at the beginning of summer, because I'll have a bunch of pens that are inked up, that first week or two, I really wind up writing with whatever happens to be there, and I write them out of ink. And because I think I've got 2 pens left from the end of the school year that have some ink in it. One I keep inking up because I just finally got it back, so I've been using it a whole bunch. But yeah, and so I still stand by what was my 3. My that I use the Emperor a lot in the morning. I use the E95S as my pocket pen. But right now, like, my A23 is out because the Lamy would be in. The Lamy will start next week. It's just waited a couple weeks because of the pen that I got back that I've waited forever for.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask, here's somebody else who likes the E95. I actually own an E95. I don't use it as much as I thought I would. I really like it. I don't know why I don't use it more. So I thought I'd open it up if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, we can talk pens a little bit more. How many pens do you typically keep inked up?
I try not to be more than 10. Really, I try to be 5, but 10's my hard limit.
Yeah, I don't like to have too many because they start to dry out, or I forget about them or something. Usually, I like 8, but sometimes if I'm doing videos, I'll have a couple more inked up just because I was using them in the videos.
Yeah. Well, by the end of by the end of summer, I'm going to have inked pens all over the house. It just winds up happening when you've got that much time. You're like, oh, this would be nice. I haven't used this one in a little bit, and used it not in a video. Used it just as a for myself.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
pen I use a lot myself is the Kaweco Brass Sport. I like it much better than the Sport, but then when I got the E95, that became my pocket pen. So I don't use it very often.
Yeah.
So like when this one gets written out, when this pilot gets written out, I'll use that for during the summer as a pocket pen, just to give it some time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've never used the Kaweco Brass Sport, but that's the one when people mention liking the Sport, that's almost always the one they say. So I feel like there must be something to that.
I think it's the weight, but for me, the plastic ones, I lose them. And I don't mean like I lose them out and about wherever. I lose it in my pocket and forget it's there. And when you go just mash your pockets, make sure there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Throw your pants in the laundry. Mine's gone through the laundry like 20 times.
Okay.
So I
hear that.
Using it.
Yeah.
So I needed a heavier pen. Or for a pocket pen, I needed a heavier. And the E95 is not heavy, but it doesn't get lost like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can just imagine putting a brass Kaweco Sport in the washing machine. You would probably hear that.
Well, you feel it in your pocket too. So
yeah, that's something. I guess I've never washed a pen. I've washed Kleenex a few times. I'm always sorry about that, but never a pen. Let's see. I thought I saw a question up here. Oh, mostly. Let's see. We got one asking what you teach.
I teach. So I always correct kids when they call me a teacher. I'm a mathematician that teaches, because that's where my training was. But I teach math classes. Specifically, I teach data, financial literacy. So all those classes that everybody complains don't get taught, they should teach kids how to do taxes. They should teach kids mortgages and about credit cards. Yeah, that's what I do. That's the class I teach.
And then I've got Juicy Louise asking if either of us have infected any student with the fountain pen habit. I know I've had a few. I had one. He was showing me the fountain pens he bought during college because he liked, what was it, the Twisby Mini for taking notes. So I think a few. I had two students a few years ago that were making fountain pens and selling them. I don't know if that's quite the same thing, but they would use them in school then because they had, they're less good pens they wouldn't try to sell. How about you?
I've given a ton of pens away over the years. Usually I give a pen, and it depends on sort of what's there. But I'll give them a pen and some ink, or whether it's in cartridges or if it's a bottle. But I've given a ton of pens away. Some stick, some don't. When you follow up later in the year and you ask them if they're still writing with it, some of them are just loving it.
Yeah.
Others, they get a little bit, oh, well, you know what? It's like, it's okay. It's not for everyone.
Right.
Let them feel a little bit better. You didn't get $100 pen. You didn't get a $20 pen. It was $5. It's okay if it wasn't for you. And that's happened probably 2/3 of the time where it's just isn't for them. But that's one of those that high school academics are different than college, and then your own writing life later on,
Yeah, that's true. The note taking in some high school classrooms is just nothing like when I went to school. It's changed. David Watson thinks you're doing useful math.
Well, I think all math is useful.
Yeah. Well, I always tell kids stuff like that is teaching you a way to think.
Yeah, and so I use a quote from a Haruki Murakami book at the beginning of the year where and he's in that book, the protagonist is an English teacher in Japan.
Hmm.
And he's explaining, does knowing the present participle or the past participle really matter? And his whole point is that all of this learning is learning how to make different neural connections, the learning how to learn a new skill. So when you go to work and you get taught that new skill at that employer, you can do it. And I like using that because this is not a math person pushing math. This is a writer who writes. If anybody reads Murakami, they understand that those books turn weird. So, but he's at that point being an English teacher and explaining why it doesn't matter what you're learning, that it's the process of learning.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because I teach science and some math, and I always tell the kids it's not that you're going to be a scientist someday. It's just teaching you how to think this way and read graphs and interpret data and accept evidence.
Actually do the scientific process and not just say, well, this is because how often do you see that? Well, this is what I think it is, but why? Like that's one of those things we all have to do ourselves, and it takes a big thing. Why do I think what I think?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm right, but maybe I'm just wrong, and
yeah,
it gets people to learn that.
So I've got Troy. I'm sorry, even my readers, I'm having trouble with that. I'm afraid is asking if about a favorite type of ink.
If I were to choose one, Namiki Blue Black.
That one has a nice color. Do you find it spreads a lot when you write on the paper with it?
No, I don't have any problems with it. There's the occasional problem paper, but it's not normally a problem for 20-pound copy paper.
Okay.
But I do get the occasional paper that is a problem I expect there's certain inks that I kind of expected. If you're having a problem with this, you have a problem with everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I guess for me, I really like Parker Quink ink. I'm trying to use up my bottles of black ink right now, but I think I'm going to settle back to Parker Quink black when I finally do use up all my awful amount of ink that I have.
And not because I do inks, but I think back when you did what black is best.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about what's the darkest black. It wasn't all these other things. It's when I'm writing, what black do I actually like the most on the page? And then you go with that. And now you had the bottles you were going through, but I think somebody doing that with samples is just the way to go on that, because everybody gets fixated on the blackest of black. I don't know, what do you like best,
Yeah, I definitely should have bought more samples instead of bottles back then. I'm smarter now, but
we all did it.
Yep. You or you get a sample, you're like, oh, I really like this. Oh, I really like this. And the next thing you know, you've got more bottles than you can use, which is my problem. Let's see. We got another. I don't really know much about the anime and the Japanese comics and stuff, but it looks like you've got somebody else here who knows them.
Yeah, 1Q84. I believe it's 1Q84. Hold on. Yeah, 1Q84. I've got it right back here.
Okay.
And it's a great book. That's the fact that it's so long, makes it even more enjoyable. You know how you get those books that they're just too short, that you get the end and you want more?
Yeah.
This one, it's long enough that when you get to the end, you're like, that was right.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I read it, I didn't know it was 3 books because I have the one big.
Okay. Let's see here. ODE, who's from Portugal, is asking if you have a favorite oversized pen.
So yeah, every morning I use the Emperor. That was my, that was my big one to really go after. Right now, it's the second topic. Right now, I'm using a lot of. So if I put them side by side, I'm using a Wall Eversharp Deco Band a lot right now. But if I put them side by side, you can see. Well, let me back up. Here we go. How large they really are, maybe in front of me, but even more, because it's one of those that I've discovered I hold pens very far back. So a larger nib for me works really well. And so by putting those nibs next to each other, you can see. So it works well for me because I actually hold these pens on the section where a lot of other pens I hold farther back, more on the threads. So I do have some oversized pens I love. I have the Medici oversized. I enjoy it. I won't say I love it. And I love the idea in that case for an oversized pen of the hook and latch.
Yeah, that is nice. That's my favorite.
I don't like it in my hand. So it's great to use, a day here, a day there for me. And that's because of the hook and latch.
Yeah.
Because I feel it right. It's right on my fingers where I'm holding that pen. If it had a larger nib, I would be holding more on the section and it would be perfect.
Okay.
So when you get to the oversized pen, it's not even just about the pen, but the larger nib actually helps. And this comes from drawing, because I used to push real hard with pens. So my dad would shave the lead off the pencils so that the lead was really, because he was an artist, so that I had to hold. And when you're holding it now farther back, you had to be gentle, or you'll break the lead.
Okay.
So I hold farther back.
For me, I think my favorite oversize is a Pelican M1000.
And it's so good.
Yeah, I think it's the nib is my favorite part of that one. I haven't used the Medici, but I've used the Visconti Homo sapiens. I like the latch system, but yeah, there's just something I ink up that Pelican more often than I do the Visconti.
Now, people get involved in the whole 800 versus 1000 thing. Have you tried the 800?
Yeah, I actually sold mine.
Okay.
I liked the 800 was too much like other pens, oops, find my camera here, like that. It was too much like that. The M1000 was just something different from any other pen I had.
The soft nib sets it aside. It's not like it's that much bigger.
Yeah, because it really isn't.
No, barely bigger. But that soft nib, and the nib's a little larger. That's what helps it be soft, and really sets it apart.
Harry Sivakumar is asking if you prefer slim pens or fat pens.
Fat pens. If I'm using a thin pen, I hold too tight. It's a me problem. I hold too tight, and so I've got a death grip on that thing, and then it's one of those where you're like, that's where the hand cramps come from. So the fatter pen, I don't hold onto. It just sits in my hand, and I can write pages and pages and not get cramps. So I like fatter pens for that reason. There is a point that's too much. The what is that? That Pilot Jumbo. That was a very short, very fat pen. That's a little too much for me.
Yeah, for me, I usually prefer slimmer pens. When it's a fatter pen, it's something about the section is engineered right that I like it. Every time I've reviewed a Jinhao 159 or the Jinhao X159, That's usually a controversial review on here because I don't like them. They're just too thick. And of course, I like my slim vintage pens. I've got Norwegian Tinkerer here is asking if you would count. I've never used this pen, so I don't have an answer. If you would count a Pilot 845 Urushi as an oversized pen.
I've had it in my hand. I don't know if it's oversized. I believe the nib is the same as the 823. So I don't know if it's an oversized or not. I don't know. I want to say if it's in standard, I think it's towards the higher end. But like oversized is, I don't know. It's a weird thing when the Visconti, the Homo sapien, and the Medici is called oversized, and it's barely bigger than the Homo sapien.
Yeah.
So I don't know as far as the size goes, as with the 845.
Okay. And you kind of alluded to an answer to this, but Robin Allen was asking what you think of the trend with the number 8 nibs.
I don't think they're for everybody. I want to say it's going to really depend a lot on where you hold pens. I hold farther back, so I like them, but it doesn't mean I like them all. And, it's just like I have, what is it? I have some number 4 nibs on some pens that I really enjoy them. So it's not like it's an exclusive thing. I do think the Jinhao coming out with a couple pens with the number 8 is awesome, because it lets people experience a nib of that size without it being an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
Because before that, a number 8 size nib, that's going to be a very expensive pen. So I think that's a huge, great thing from Jinhao that I don't think it's a new trend. I just think that Jinhao's just made it affordable for everybody.
Okay. Yeah, he followed that up. He's just asking if nib sizes will continue to increase. It kind of makes me think of that old Saturday Night Live skit where they have like the 13 blade razor.
Yes. I don't know. I think they'll. I don't think they're really going to go. There's not many that are bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to go bigger. Number 6 seems to be the most common. I think it's going to stay the most common. But like if I were to guess, I would guess that a lot of your pens have number 4 size nibs because you have a lot of smaller pens.
Yeah.
And I just think some stuff comes down to a preference. I have a lot of number 6 size nibs, but when you get into a trend of what's going on, I feel like you don't get to know it's a trend until it's already happening. And then once you see it's happening, it's dying as a trend.
Okay.
But I don't see them continuing to increase. The number 8's been around for a very long time. There's always going to be the oddball that's even bigger.
Yeah, I got to find it again. There was a comment down here somewhere. Oops, not that one. About number 10 nibs. I got to find it again. Oh, and the 845 has a number 15 nib, he says. I think that's the same as the 823.
That's the 823, yeah.
Okay.
They use that nib in quite a few different pens.
Yeah, I have a 923, I think, or 9 something. Anyway, whatever it is, it's got a same nib. Okay. Yeah, there's somebody who doesn't think that's an oversized pen. Oh, here it is. ODE said it. They have one. The Jinhao does, or not Jinhao, Junlai has a number 10 nib in it. I've never even heard of that. Okay. Jonathan Siegel asks if either of us ever use vintage pens for everyday carry. For me, the answer is yes. But
I have 2 vintage. Well, technically, I have 3 vintage pens, and I say technically because the one you won't know is vintage without actually just knowing.
Mhm.
But I have a Kaweco 745 that's got a ridiculously flexible nib on it. I have used it for some daily writing, but not like at work because the ridiculously flexible nib is a little too much for, and you're trying to take some notes.
Yeah.
I have the Waterman Edson that I've definitely used, quite a bit as a daily writer. That's a girthier pen, not an oversized nib, but it's a girthier pen, so it becomes very comfortable for me. And then I have the Mont Blanc 149. That mine is a vintage pen. Mine, I think, is from '84.
Okay. Yeah, I like the vintage Mont Blancs. I've never used a 149 of any kind, but the vintage ones had the ebonite feeds, and they the nibs I think were just generally flexier back then. I have a 146 and then a couple other models.
I had a chance to get a 149 at a really good deal, and because I was looking at Mont Blanc as an interest, not something I was chasing. And I wasn't sure where to be, whether the 146 or the 149. I wasn't sure.
Okay. I got one other question, and I thought we'll jump into the next topic. Let me find it here. Oh, yeah. This person was asking favorite pen brand and ink brand. Hari Sivakumar. And hopefully I pronounced that right. I apologize in advance. I have a name that's not typical, so I'm used to it.
So do I. So I have to correct kids. Correct me on how to say your name. I'll get it right. I'm definitely a Pilot fanboy. And it didn't happen on purpose. It wasn't like I got a couple and said, "Oh, that's it." It just happened where I realized, oh, I really like Pilot's pens and inks. Not all of them, but it's like my brother and I at one point were looking at vintage cars. Okay, and I had no idea, but apparently I love the Ford Fairlane. Because every time when we were going through, I'm like, oh, what's this? And then after a bit of doing that, this is going to be a Fairlane. So that's kind of how I like Pilot came about. That it was after I was able to say, all right, I really like their pens and inks.
Yeah, I've been very happy with every Pilot pen I've ever owned. They're just reliable. They work. Sometimes they say they're like the Toyota Camry of pens because none of them are very exciting, but they just work. Anyone you pick up, it's going to work. I can say that because I drive a 10-year-old or 25-year-old Toyota Camry.
Yeah. See, I would take that as Pilot. I drive a Nissan Sentra. I drive a car that's not a whole lot of anything special, but I know that it's going to work every single time.
Yeah, I guess for me, for favorite pen, I'm mostly I like the vintage pens, but I'd say the Lamy 2000. But I don't really care for anything else Lamy has. Like I really don't care for the Safari or what's the aluminum? Yeah, they've got a couple pens. I don't care for any of them except the Lamy 2000, but I really like that. Ink, I'm trying to use up ink, but I found Parker ink, of course, but there's not many colors there. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly which would be my favorite ink. So we're going to change topics a little bit because we had also talked about when not to review a pen, which I think is something we've both run into for different reasons. I know for me, I always feel bad when if it's a vintage pen, sometimes I'll review it and say, this is what's wrong with it because I know what's wrong with it. You know, if I'm bashing some 1950s manufacturer that's no longer in business, oh well. But I pause when it's a new pen that doesn't work, because I always think, is it the pen, this particular pen, or is it the model in general? And I'm always nervous about reviewing a pen like that. So if I can't find good things to say about it, I often don't film at all, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
How about you?
So on the majority, like on reviews for ink, for instance, I have no problem with saying I hate this ink. I have no problem with saying this ink is complete garbage
Mm-hmm.
when it's really an established brand, you know. And so I like Pilot, but if Pilot puts out an ink that I think is complete garbage, they can take the hit. So I'll say that. But if it's a small, brand new, just getting going company, maybe I don't talk about them. Just, you know, put out one, see what then people say about it, find it, because you know what happens in the comments, though. They'll turn around and go, no, I have the same problem.
Yeah.
Okay, this company has to work on something if a lot of people are getting the same thing. I don't do a lot of pens, but I had one that I got back in the Miami show, and that's what had prompted this as the topic, that I got it. I loved it. The Wall Eversharp Deco Band, and I got the seaweed finish and absolutely love it. And it's not going to show up on camera. But if you live at the beach and you've ever seen the pile of seaweed that can be just washed up, that's what it looks like. And I grew up on the New Jersey shore. So seeing it, loved it. Bought it, brought it home. A month later, I'm having problems filling the pen. And I can't figure out what in the world's going on. So I send it back to them to get it fixed, because the knob on the end, I can do this because I'm not going to push I'm not going to put my finger over it. But this knob was so tight, I could not tighten it or untighten it. So in order to use the pen, I would have to treat it like a dip pen, and that was heartbreaking. So I send it back to them. I wait a few months to get it back. I get it back. Nothing's fixed. So I can't use it. It's sitting in a drawer in its box, or in a box. And I search periodically for a way to get this thing fixed, because the only people I can find was the people I bought it from, and they'd already done nothing with it. I went to a machinist, because if you go to, I went to a machinist that deals in making medical parts. So they're used to that kind of precision. And what it came down to was, because of how to get it apart, they couldn't fix it. Because they didn't know how to get it apart, and they couldn't figure out how to get it apart. Okay. So they couldn't fix it. Right? So I had 2 attempts to try and get it fixed. And then through time, I got really, and I made the hate video. I'm going to bash the hell out of this thing. Wall Eversharp doesn't make a lot of pens. They only make a couple models. They do different finishes. And I'm so glad that I put it off, because I found Sid at Pensbury Manor. And that's the link that I wound up sending you, that Sid at Pensbury Manor. So Sid is the actual trademark holder for Wall Eversharp. And I had a conversation with him about this. Very nice conversation, and how he got to become the owner, how the pens got actually done. And basically, he found the child of the guy that made the pens. They're being made in the same spot. He does it and basically gets one of every finish they make.
Okay.
All right. So now they've got like over 30 different finishes of this pen. 2 of them had a problem. So at one point, I've got the pen out of the desk, and it's hard to take the cap off. It's hard to put the cap on. The cap is scratching the section. And this makes no sense, because did my cap shrink? Yes, my cap shrank. So 2 of the finishes actually shrank because the curing for those materials took longer than normal, and they were shrinking. And so what they were doing to make sure people were happy was if you had one of these two finishes, and I don't remember the other one off the top of my head, but the seaweed was one of them. But if you had one of these two finishes and you were that unhappy with your pen, they were just replacing it. Let us just give you a brand new pen. And so most of them have come completely off the street. They're not out there. But it was the finish that I fell in love with on this pen. So he went to work on the pen, and about 2 weeks later, I got it back. I have been writing with it constantly with no problems. So I am so glad that I put that review off, because otherwise, what is actually a very small company would have had this review that comes out bashing it. Because like when I was having all these problems, I kept looking up to see who else is having problems. And when I was seeing nothing. I was ultimately seeing, hey, I have this vintage Wall Eversharp and I need to repair this thing. That's nothing on the modern. I was the only one that had this problem with the modern, it felt like. So I wasn't saying anything, right? And I didn't want to bash this company that doesn't make a lot of different stuff.
Right.
Yeah, they make the Skyline as well. They make a modern Skyline.
Yeah, I used modern. I own a modern Skyline.
So I put it off, and this is years, because if you go look back, I think it was 2021, I went to the Miami show, and I haven't done a review on this pen. Oh, yeah. So I haven't done a review on this pen because, I was so unhappy with it and didn't want to bash a company that only really makes two things. And you make that video, and it's out there forever. Like, that's all people are going to remember. Right. And the one I'm going to point out, because people hear it and they misdo it all the time. And, so Noodler's makes the Warden ink. Right. Mm-hmm. And in the Warden series, each formulation is slightly different. They're chemically different. It's a combination of that ink. Okay. Or it's like a combination lock.
Okay.
Well, his saying that has led to people saying, yeah, but Noodler's batches changed they change from batch to batch. No, the Warden series changes from batch to batch. Noodler's 41 is Noodler's 41. The others are what they are. Now, that's not to say, like with any other manufacturer, this die no longer is available, so they've changed it, and maybe a change has happened. But it's not a batch-to-batch change. The Warden series is a batch-to-batch change. But because he said it on one, and then it got repeated, then it was, no, there's change from batch to batch. Well, there's not. There's as much consistency there as there are with the big retail brands. So I didn't want to put that out and then have that become the thing that follows Wall Eversharp.
Right.
So I'm glad I didn't do it, because again, I would have put that out there, and then I would have been that loud voice. This is the problem with this pen, and that's all that people would really remember. And it would not have been fair to them as a brand, because there was ultimately two things. He would have just, and this was years. I mean, this happened this year. So I bought it in 2021, well out of warranty. If I wanted it replaced, he would have replaced it, because it was more important to just keep customers happy, because they know it's a problem with the material. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's something I did. The material's a known problem to them. Keep the customer happy. But because it was the material I loved, they made sure they got my pen running again, Yeah. So I'm very happy, because then it becomes more about what happened with this company when stuff went wrong.
Right. Yeah, and that always tells you a lot about a company, maybe even more than when everything's going well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a deal with one of my pen pals that if one of us ever buys a Wall Eversharp Deco band, we have to buy the other one of them too also. So I'll probably never buy that pen. I don't think I
said that
can.
the first time. I thought it was the Conid bulk filler that because you didn't say what it was.
Oh,
I thought you were referring to the Conid bulk filler because that was the big one. I remember years ago you said something about that. I'm going to tell you, this is it's a joy, but it is a bladder filler.
mm,
It's a lot more work to clean out.
yeah.
Absolute joy. To me, it's worth every penny. And it's just a matter of, like, I would love to get another one.
Mm-hmm.
I have to wait for the right finish.
Yeah, I think they're manufacturing again, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So Sid, basically, there was the guy that worked the machines. He used to bring his son to work all the time. And his son learned how to work the machines and learned how to make the pens.
Mm.
The guy, as we all do, got old and passed. The son now makes the pens. So Sid got the son of the guy, and you're making them on the same machines.
Okay.
So he revived the brand, and I think he's done a great job. Really, it's an amazing pen to me.
Yeah, I'd still like to get one. I have a Chinese bulk filler, but I really want a Conid. So someday. Let's see. We got
you on when you don't do reviews.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, we got Harry's asking about a Grail pen. For suggestion. I guess I'm more practical. When I started out, I started putting my money into my retirement. It was many years before I actually bought a Grail pen. But that's not a fun answer. Yeah, I think a Grail pen's something to work toward for sure. But I don't know if I'd want to get it right away. Part of the pleasure of it is something you have to work for. Like the Conid bulk filler for me. Or there's an Akai I really want it's got a dragon finish on it, but it's probably about 3 times as much as I've ever spent for any pen ever. So I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think getting your Grail pen is great, depending on your personality for it. If you get your Grail pen and then immediately get a new Grail pen, then I don't see the reason. I don't see but I got my Grail pen and it broke me. I've bought pens since then, but for me, it was the Namiki Emperor. It was the pen that I wanted more than any other. And I can say that, I've seen pens come out. I've seen plenty of times where I'm like, that's amazing. Like the Pilot 100th anniversary came out and I was like, they're gorgeous. And I wanted one real bad. And I was like, I can wait a couple years for that. I'll wait because the price will come down, because someone will get one and then not want it, and I'll get it much cheaper. So, I think getting the Grail pen's great, as long as you don't then just shift to, now I need this new thing. And your Grail pen shouldn't in itself be about the price, because again, the Pilot 100th, I love it. It wasn't my Grail pen. It cost more than the pen that was the one that actually got me. But I say that pen broke me because it is everything I was hoping it would be. In every way. I can sit down and write all day long, no hand cramps, enjoy how it feels in my hand the whole time. Always a great writing experience. So I think they're great in that way. It makes getting it, if you can hold on to that was the thing I really wanted, and I got exactly what I was after. Then when you see that other thing come along, because I've had plenty where I'm like, oh, that's really nice.
Hmm.
I'll wait, and if it goes away, so be it, because I still got this beauty that I use every day. So, and I think that to me more is much more would matter there. If you're someone that says, "Okay, I've achieved this, but now I need to go to a new thing,"
Yeah.
then maybe don't. You know, but I think there's like a lot of times when people say Grail Pen, they're talking about a price on a pen that they have to get to.
Yeah.
Um, I think the strange thing is when you've spent more money on some pens, like I've become less precious of my pens having pens that cost much more money. If that makes completely no sense there. I will, somebody wants to try it here, try the 823. Go ahead, try it.
Hmm.
Well, how much does it cost? Don't worry about it. It's a pen.
Yeah.
That's all that it is, and occasionally, so like my anniversary pen, my 100th anniversary pen, I don't hand that to anybody to use. And that's because it would hurt their feelings if it dropped. The other thing to me is that, like on that pen, if somebody dropped it, if somebody was using it and dropped it and cracked the barrel, right? So now this is a 100th anniversary and it's got a cracked barrel.
Hmm.
How amazing an opportunity is that to send that pen back to Japan and get what is it, wabi sabi, where they fill in all the cracks with gold. And
Oh.
yeah, you fill in the cracks with gold and you highlight the cracks, but repair it.
Hmm.
How amazing an opportunity would that be if it got cracked? I'm not saying I want my pen cracked, but
Yeah.
my point is that it's not diminishing anything for me. It just means it has to get sent to be repaired and it's going to be made even better. So as I've spent more, I'm less precious. And, that all comes with the Grail. I've let people use the Namiki Emperor. So when I've gone to events, I tend to bring it because how often do you get the chance to write with the Emperor?
Yeah. I've never
Yeah.
touched one.
So I bring it, share that fun.
Hmm. Well, there's a comment here. We were talking about this earlier about the dyes in inks, and Andrew Hoffman pointed out that Lamy had a problem with this, with dyes in one of their inks. And that's a pretty big manufacturer. I think Lamy could handle a hit better than Noodler's could.
Yes.
And I remember Noodler's had that trouble with one of my favorite Noodler's inks, the Black Swan and Australian Roses, because it suddenly turned a very strange purple because one of the dyes had changed and he didn't know about that.
And I think in both cases, what they really should have done was either acknowledge it in some way coming out that this is a newer version, or give it a different name.
Yeah.
So like I think where Lamy messed up, but they owned it. But they should not have used the same name. I forget what that was. It was a something purple, I think.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
But I don't think they should have reused the same name. But I can also understand that they did not realize it was a big hit, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
I've never used either of those two Lamy inks.
Yeah. Well, Jeff made a comment about Grail pens. Well, he calls it a Grail pen. He says when you make a big purchase and are immediately disappointed because of some quality control issue. And I agree. That's always my fear when I buy a more expensive pen is, oh, what if I don't like it? I had that experience with one that I actually have shared on the channel because it's a big enough company they could take the hit, but it was a Stipula, and I bought one with the titanium T-Flex.
Yeah, T-Flex.
And
so
I got it.
If you buy a pen and it's got a problem and you have to send it back, that's not the end of the world. To me, that's the same thing as you bought a car and then it gets recalled because of a part that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? I don't, I don't see the big deal there. I understand it. Like, I understand it. I've sent up there. It is dark lilac. That was the ink that but I've sent a pen back to be repaired 3 times. But if I focus on that, I will hate looking at this pen.
Yeah.
But if I instead go, this is my pen that now works, and I get to enjoy the heck out of it. And look at this thing. It's beautiful. So I understand the disappointment because I had it. I've only had it this long, and I have to send it back. And now it's gone for months. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get it back. And then, and so just that, okay, you got a pen and something is not perfect, and it's an expensive pen, and I understand the frustration. I get it. High-end cars are still going to have something that has to get repaired.
Yeah.
And sometimes right away.
Yeah, and there's some of the high-end brands that are pretty famous for you need to have a mechanic ready.
Yeah. And some of them it's just going to be a matter of their maintenance schedule is going to be much more intensive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And my parents, I'm trying to remember which car it was. I know my parents had a car that for a while that you couldn't use the 87 octane gas and could only get the oil changed at the dealer and just a whole bunch of crazy stuff. They don't buy high-end cars. They're like me. They're pretty frugal, more frugal than me, honestly. But yeah, that's what they really didn't like with that car is all the picking it, because they live in a rural area just like I do.
Yeah.
Not North Dakota. They're smarter than that, but it is rural where they live. So I saw. Oh, I just want to read this comment
It's
here.
probably time to get a couple questions from people.
Yeah, well, there haven't been too many floating up here. Well, there's one here. I don't have an answer to this because my Visconti experience is extremely limited. I got an answer from, and I'm not sure if I should say his name because it wasn't a public answer. It was in a pen pal letter, but another pen reviewer who does review a lot of Viscontis, and his answer to this question is that yes, they have had problems, but on the whole that they're pretty good. And he's owned enough to actually say that. I can't offer anything other than that.
Yeah, I only have one Visconti pen that's got a problem, and it's not the nib. That's what everybody thinks the problem was. My Van Gogh, the magnet inside rusted, and I've been informed not to shower with the pen. But the thing is that I believe they used to have a problem. I don't think they do have a problem. Like, even that, if that magnet didn't get completely covered with whatever they were treating them with, then the rust gets in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be no stopping it. Magnets are going to rust real fast.
Yeah, that's what I think happened to his Homo sapiens, because the magnet quit working.
Yeah.
And I was, I glued a finial onto it. And life goes on. It has a problem.
I would do the same thing.
Every so often, it'll just vomit ink into the cap. And then I'm guessing it never dried properly.
But yeah, I don't think that Visconti has the quality control issues anymore. But I believe their old, were they doing a titanium? Were they the ones doing titanium nibs?
Palladium nibs.
Palladium nibs. That's where I think they really had problems.
Yeah.
And I think that those were the nibs that had the big problems, and that metal nib haunted them forever.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't their gold nibs. So no, I don't think they have the quality control issue anymore. I think it was and even that, I think it was a brief period of time. That's going to be the same as Like the Visconti quality control is a brief period. Like the private reserve had a brief period of time under the old owners that they had some inks that were turning.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
got a couple of those.
that became the reputation for private reserve. And it was like, but that was a specific time. And when they got it narrowed down to, and this is the time frame, they got back what they could get back and went to make it right. But all that people are going to remember is, but they had that problem.
Yeah. Like Twisby took forever to get over the cracking issue that they had long, long ago. Yeah, and this ODE is kind of saying the same thing you did about some brands are famous for bad quality control.
Yeah, and Kaweco's got that reputation, or I should say had the reputation with their older nibs on their broad nibs on the Sport. And it was one of those really specific. It was the last nibs they had, and it was their broads and double broads. That was it. Not their fines, nothing else. Just broad and double broad on the Sport. And that was a limited period of time.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have the problem anymore. They've changed.
Yeah, I don't think they're even doing palladium nibs anymore.
No, Visconti went away from them, and their problems all went away.
Let's see here. Oh, yeah, ODE says it really well to sum up this topic. Sometimes we spread our limited experiences as a universal truth, and that's why I agree with holding some reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, Norwegian Tinkerer, it's difficult to shake a bad reputation. Well, I think the other topic we talked about is just the future of our channels. And again, feel free to jump in with questions at any point. I know you had some interesting thoughts about the future of your channel when we talked earlier, what you wanted to share there.
Yeah, well, I'm getting at a point where, it's not views, because I've always known that ink reviews are not going to be the thing that draws people in, right? Never worried about that being a thing. But I'm looking at really transitioning in time away entirely from reviewing anything. And it would be much more of a pen in use. Like, it's not what I'm using the week, but this is a pen and this is something that I do. So for instance, I don't know if it comes down to, now trying to think, when I sit and I read, so this would be its own video at that point. In this case, this idea would be the video. When I'm reading something, sometimes you get this is a great idea, and I really need to save this idea. And instead of copying those words into my notebook, I'm now just going to be able to go write a page or two to myself explaining the idea I'm trying to hold on to. So the book I'm reading, like just for fun right now, what I'm reading is Salem's Lot from Stephen King.
Okay.
Spoiler for anybody that hasn't read it. Really grim, but at one point, this mother and her baby, and she beats the baby. Okay. And then to get the baby to stop crying, she leaves. The baby's crying in the room. And then she eventually comes back, and she's going to go take the baby to the kitchen to eat. But when the baby sees her, the baby lights up and smiles, so happy to see her. No idea that she was the one that was just pounding on this baby not long ago, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's trauma bonding. That baby, that is, and I don't know when that book was built that the phrase trauma bonding was there. But I was like, but that's trauma bonding. That is a perfect example of when people just keep going back to their abuser and they can't help it. Right. And so I wound up writing about that. Mm-hmm. Spoiler for anybody that what the book was out in the 80s, But
Yeah, I think so. I think that was his.
But just to be able to explain that, that's not a book that I'm researching something on. That's a book that I'm just reading. But when I came across that, I was like, he had this nailed in a fiction book in a way that can explain this idea that I don't know that they had. I don't know that that was the phrase for it then, right? But that could be used now to explain it. And I think that's perfect to try and get people to understand how someone keeps going back to people that hurt them.
Yeah.
Right. Even though it wasn't me reading some self-help book, or even then. So that would be a whole video in itself, just talking about just that, extracting this idea and writing about that myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you've ever read 48 Laws of Power? Or is it 47? The Laws of Power book.
Yeah, I don't remember the number either.
Yeah, it's 47 or 48. But I liked reading the stories in that, where people try to just, but this is the law. And I'm like, yeah, but if you read the law, you're missing it. The story is what you get to hold on to. And so I liked reading what he said the law was, and then reading the story so all the marginal stories, and then going back and reading, because when I was reading the marginal stories, what else am I getting that isn't just this law, but is something more? So, but to me, that's an entire idea to be able to talk about. And so my writing in there about, because other than that, if you just said, well, these are because you can see videos where people do that and are like, these are the 48 Laws of Power. Okay. You regurgitated ultimately the title of his chapter and have missed the point. There's one in there, and it's like basically never mess with the serpent. And then he explains who the serpent is, that the serpent is the one that will wait years and years, setting up and waiting for their correct opportunity to then strike. The person that will play the long game of revenge. Right?
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, no, that's really good. But if all you really get is the law, and that's how people read it, and you're like, you missed it. But if you read the stories, and then when I read that, if you've ever read The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh yeah.
That's the serpent.
Yes.
Yes. Now you could sit there and say, but you can get all that from reading other books. Yes, but I wouldn't know that The Count of Monte Cristo is the serpent had I not read them both.
Right.
So that's what I'm looking at is really, so I'm looking at it at next year. I'm emptying my backlog, everything I have that is either been filmed or just needs to get reviewed and get out of the way. Right. Because I won't feel right if I just go through and just get rid of it. Like, I'm just going to use it. I'm just going to ignore this, move on with the channel. I'm going to make the reviews. So I'm going to continue with the inks. I think the way it works out mathematically is I'm on 6 inks a week next year. I've got papers that need to get done. So there will probably be a paper. So this is me just trying to get all of that finished. Like I'm finishing the scheduling of it all now while I continue working on it. But when I get all that done, I've got some ideas of videos for the beginning of 2027. So I know how weird this all sounds. 2026 is empty everything out of the backlog. And there's some experimenting that happens in there. So I'm going to experiment with a series, with a 12 video series that would be once a month. I want to experiment with a different type of videos because I don't really do, for instance, all top down, what would be like a faceless. I don't really do an all talking head video, but to experiment with some of those. What happens if it's all talking head? What if it's all just camera down? So some different ideas like that. I'm going to do some videos that I had planned on doing. And then Seaweed Kisses came out with a video on however many video or notebooks better than a Moleskine. And I had this video like filmed. And then I saw it come up on their channel. Deleted it.
Yeah.
And that's because I don't want to do what everybody else has done, but I think I'm going to go back and do that video. Right. But I don't want to. So I've had times when I said, I'm going to try and do something a little different. And then you see somebody do it and I get rid of it because I don't want to do what everybody else does. But I also want to get away from just doing product reviews. So it's going to become a much more of a, this is how I use some of the stuff I have. I don't do, and I never want to do listicle videos. My top 10, whatever. No.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I understand why people do it. You see the same thing in the back end of YouTube that I do, where YouTube goes, hey, you know, it'd be a good video for you to do is your top 10, whatever. And I go, no. Come December, it's telling you to do top 10s. I don't want to do it. I know it'll get views. I don't care about just views. You know, so I'm looking to shift away from product reviews, become much more, this is how I'm using stuff. And who knows, you know, who knows what happens at that point, but that's what I'm looking at doing. I think it's because I have a lot of the writing done, the writing samples and that stuff done for a lot of inks where I just have to do a bunch of voiceovers. But I think what happens for a lot of people is I don't think they get burnt out. I think they get bored.
Yes.
And are afraid to shift. Like, I think that's what has happened to when people go away. They go, I've done a whole bunch of these videos, and how do I stop doing pen reviews? Well, you might so I have videos planned where, for instance, talk about different index cards. Yeah, some are crap and some are really good and some are really decent, right? But is there a just best time to use different ones? Mm-hmm. And like I like the Clairefontaine ones, the Exxon Campa. They're too smooth to use as flashcards. But they're good because they're archival.
Mm.
So to be able to say there's a different application, even though it's the same thing, but it's not exactly the same. And that's where I'm looking at shifting towards during the transition period. So there would be some videos that almost look like they're product reviews, but they're not really. So, and what's the worst that happens? I get the amount of viewers I actually expected is none. Never expected anybody to really watch any of it anyway.
Yeah, I remember being surprised when I hit 100 subscribers. It's just, how does this happen?
Same thing. I said it to my brother. I said, I got 100 subscribers. How in the world?
Yeah. ODE had a comment about, you know, it's nice to see something someone else has done before, just to see a different perspective. I know I've done the same thing as you. I've sometimes said, oh, I'm not going to release that video. Or I've actually had creators email me and say, hey, I just did this video and I saw yours, and is it going to step on your toes if I do a video? No, so I like that.
We had that discussion once, you and I.
Yeah, you might be the creator I'm thinking of. Come to think of it.
We had the discussion on the Platinum 3776.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, because you put yours in a drawer for 6 months, and your video came out, I think, 2 months before mine that I was working on for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and to me, that was one that I couldn't get away from. I spent 2 years on that. Not like I was working every day. They sat in a drawer, and, you know, an alarm went off 6 months later and said, film 2 minutes of video, and then put it all together at the end. But that was an extreme case where there was a lot that went in there. I'm putting that video out. I thought that was going to be much more successful than it was.
Yeah, same here.
But I understand the different perspectives on stuff, but it's I'm gonna sound like I'm spilling tea on people or throwing shade or whatever people want to say now. But they had right now the trend in the fountain pen community is well, these are some of my movies these are the books that I'm reading, and it's like great if you do book reviews as a part of your rotation every now and then, right? Every couple months you start but you've been doing that. But now if people start doing that it's like, wait a minute. Drew and Fig Boot did the movie videos. And so now if I start seeing a bunch of people talking about their favorite movie, I understand you feel like this video hit and you want to do your side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do your own thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know for me, I enjoy sharing the vintage pens, and I don't think I'd get totally away from that, but I don't really enjoy doing product reviews anymore. It's, that I have a few new pens that are going to be appearing, but I think I'm at that point where, I want to collect. There's a couple of specific new pens I want, but I've gotten bored with it, as you said, and I found that I enjoy doing YouTube. I enjoy the community that we have here. And so I've been trying to transition to things that are more that I can do and not get bored with. And who knows, maybe I'd come back and review fountain pens again down the road.
But isn't that really how it sort of should be able to be? I should be able to transition away from doing ink reviews because that's mostly really what I do, right? The paper reviews started because of Lisa Van Ness.
Yeah.
She had encouraged me to do them because they serve as reference material. But that's where I've seen where my videos really fall. They're reference material for people. Somebody goes, "What's Thornton's ink?" I have Thornton's ink reviews.
Mm-hmm. And that is a real power of YouTube, but Instagram and the other social media just don't have. It is really an archive. I get comments on videos that I did 10 years ago. It's
and I still answer those.
Yeah, it's evergreen. Whatever I thought of the Lami 2010 years ago, people are still buying it.
Yeah, and so that's where, like, for the transition, I think I should be able to stop doing ink reviews, stop doing any product reviews. I still probably am looking more at evergreen videos because I'm not looking at it as what I'm using right now. It's how I'm using what I'm using right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that plays into what Jonathan Siegel was saying. I like review videos that contain an element of context. This is where I'd use the pen, or this one stays at home because So I actually had a couple of questions. Let's see. William was asking about hero brandings, and I have honestly never used hero ink. Till he asked that question, I didn't even know they made ink. Although I should have guessed.
I knew they've made it. I haven't gotten anywhere to it. I have not tested it. I haven't used it at all. But if I were to make a guess, because I tested the Jinhao. Okay. I tested Jinhao inks. And you want to know what performs way better than you would have expected? The Jinhao inks. They did amazing. Right? And I was I got it and went, okay, here's they're going to watch this to see how bad it is. And it was really good. And so I would expect that the hero ink is not that different than the Jinhao ink. And I bet if you go with basics on your colors, your blue, your black, your blue black, I bet those are really good. Okay. I bet to me, those are the most basic three. And then after that, you would get red as like a color, right? Yeah. As your most basic colors. I bet the most basic colors from Hero are really good inks because for the fountain pen users in China, are they going after I don't know, I don't even know if Diamine's available there, but I don't want to call it the knockoffs, but there's a lot of knockoffs for a lot of things in China. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more accepted there. So if you're getting this pen and it's the cheaper version and you're perfectly happy, then I would expect that them saying this is a perfectly good black ink, and I'm willing to bet that the Hero ink is good. Like I'd put money that if I went and bought a bottle and looked at it, it's going to perform as well as any other black ink. Any other good black ink. I've seen some bad black inks, but as you would expect a black ink to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good answer. That's a good answer, actually. I'll just say Chris Rap 52 uses a lot of Chinese inks, so that might be a question to approach him with also. Stephen Finan was asking, why would you delete a review if somebody else did one on the same pen? Unless you're having the exact same opinion as the other guy, you should post your video as an addition or even as a contrast. I guess for me, I always worry I'm stepping on somebody's toes, or, oh, look, an ink guy did this. I better jump in and do it too because I'm following the trend. I think that's been part of my fear. Or now that I filmed this, is this really my opinion, or is it heavily influenced by what I just saw? If I've already filmed it, I guess that'd be different, but that's my thinking whenever I run into this. I don't know if you have more articulate thoughts.
I don't know. When it comes to, I mean, I can talk about it for pens and for inks, but if I'm talking about like an ink and Vita has reviewed it and we have the exact same opinion, because we have other stuff we do not have the same opinion. And they haven't put out videos in a while. She hasn't. But the thing is, if we have the exact same opinion, that just shows that there is some consistency.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. But what I feel like they were pointing at was I scrapped a video where I had like notebooks that were better than Moleskine. And Seaweed Kisses put out a video and I had just filmed it. And I was like, I'm going to edit this one, over this. And I had like a long weekend coming. So over this 3-day weekend, because I really want to. And then I saw their video and I was, delete it. I'm not going to do it right now, because if I come out with that video 3 weeks after theirs, I feel like what's happening is I just put out the same thing. It's, now I'm forgetting the name of the other movie. Same time Braveheart came out.
Oh.
And now I'm forgetting, but it was a much better movie. It takes place in the Highlands.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm forgetting, but that's just the point. There's no way they said Braveheart did well, we're going to get this movie together. In the month later, that movie came out.
Yeah.
Right? Similar idea, similar timing. One got it out first. If their release was in reverse, nobody would remember Braveheart. Right? Well, if I put my video out after, I would have put it out 3 weeks after they had this huge success of a video.
Yeah, like Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5. People always think Babylon 5 stole the idea, and actually Babylon 5 came first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that's the reason that I'll scrap a video, even if I filmed it. If I'm getting ready to do it and somebody else did it, too close. Your 3776 video was like 2 months before mine. There was enough time and there was enough of a difference in, you did 6 months and it was a converter.
Yeah.
And I did 2 years and I had so I had 4 different pens for it. For every 6 months, it changed to see, because I was concerned if it failed at 2 years, I didn't know when it failed. And I was using cartridges, right? And I used cartridges over a converter because I was afraid if the converter had any air gaps at all, that it would dry out. So I
Yeah.
felt like I had a more controlled environment with cartridges. So in that case where I did it, there was enough difference that, yeah, do that, you know? But if I had done 6 months with a converter, I'd have gone clean that. If that was, or that, if that was me, if I was doing 6 months if I was only doing 6 months and I had a cartridge in and I saw your video, I wouldn't have said anything. I'd have gone, pulled the pen out of the drawer, cleaned it, moved on.
Yeah.
Scrap the beginning video and call it over. It's not I just don't want to do what everybody else is doing.
Well, Harry was asking, do we ever experience burnout in the fountain pen community?
No, but I think, and I'm not, because that one went around for a while where I think it was Roy did a video where he was talking about he was getting burnt out.
Yeah.
And that's why I said burnt out or bored, So I think people get bored.
Yeah.
Not burnt out, because there's a difference. Burnt out is you have too much stimulus coming at you. And it's wearing you down that way. Where bored, it's a repetition that's wearing you down. It's not that you're feeling overworked. I don't tend to feel either, but I also have breaks.
Yeah.
So like I won't film anything over the summer right now. Everything's filmed and done, and I've got a buffer for the beginning of the school year. I will sit down and work on some of these ideas that I want to develop, like the series that I want to do. Right? I'll sit down and work on scripting that out, and that's going to be a lot of B-roll that happens, and not B-roll like where normally, the B-roll is me writing, or it's me, just the camera down while I'm talking in voiceover. B-roll as in actually filming footage to illustrate the idea, not while this is going. You know what I mean? So getting a camera close to, I know I've seen the footage before, but I want to make my own. Getting a camera real close to a nib so that you can almost see the ink coming out, going on the paper. Can I accomplish it? Maybe I can't, but if I can, that would be neat. And so I've got a lot of B-roll ideas I want to try and put in there. And so with that, I'm working out how I want to do these videos where they're going to present differently, but where I'll also be able to say what presentation method actually worked best. So if I don't like filming this way, I'll ignore it. But if I like these ways, which one worked best for the audience? Because if I enjoy it and they enjoy it, then we've got a win. And that's a way I can move forward with, So that's what I'm working on, is some of that, because I know it doesn't seem like the videos get scripted. But when I change format, that's a whole to do in figuring out how I want to make little changes. So I don't really film over the summer normally. That's where I'll work on how do I want to change it next year. That's when sometimes I'll work on other ideas. But it was over the summer one year, I think I did the He-Man video.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so now it's on my channel as like the trailer. But I did the opening of He-Man, because I was just goofing around, having fun with an editing program, trying to do stuff with the editing program. And then as I was doing it, I looked at it and I said, this is so bad, but right bad. And nobody expects this to look professional. So it's perfect. Right. And people enjoyed that when it came out. And it's even getting used to that. You can make bad and it can be okay. But yeah, the summer's where I put down different ideas. It's also where I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of my own, goof off writing and reading during the summer. So, but I don't record.
Yeah, I tend to do more recording in the summer. I like to start the school year with a buffer of videos.
Yeah, at least a month.
Yeah. And then I usually get those. There's 1 or 2 times of the year when I'm extremely busy. One is around State Science Olympiad. I usually have to skip videos that week. Usually I'll skip like a week or two right at the end of school, which just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I know I did a video about burnout, but for me, I think boredom would be the thing, because I mean, how do you get burned out on this? I do it when I want. If I don't want, I don't do it. I think many of the people who've gotten burned out on it, it's because they take too much on, so they kind of do it to themselves. And like Matt Armstrong talked about the negative comments he was getting, and he also went into some pretty serious credit card debt over it. Yeah, he did it to himself, and he had a very he wouldn't have let things go like I do. He was very meticulous in how he did his videos, and I'm not.
Yeah. And like I tell people you shouldn't use credit for any of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Shouldn't use credit for any of it. And I'm not saying don't use a credit card.
Right.
Because I'll use my credit card because I get cash back, but I pay my credit card. Like, I've got the money for this right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use the card so I can get my cash back and then pay it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember that he went into some debt over trying to keep up with, and there's a reason I never want to review pens. For one, I don't want to only spend a week with a pen, basically.
Yeah.
But how do you keep up with a new pen every single week? The only real way to be able to do it is to do the incredibly affordable. What's the newest Jinhao that came out? And I like Jinhao.
Yeah.
Right? As the Chinese brands go, I think Jinhao is one of the best ones. But that's basically then saying, what does Jinhao come out with so I can do that now? I don't want to do that. Inks are much less money, but even that adds up. And I want to shift away. Maybe I come back to it later, but
yeah.
If I decide to come back to it later, then that's what I do. I see David Watson says,
Yeah.
do you like Iron Gall? I like Iron Gall ink. Iron Gall ink is the historical version of the blue black that I like. That's why we have the blue black inks, is they are mimicking the Iron Gall ink. I really like the Ackermans. I think it's number 10 is an Iron Gall.
Okay.
I have found for a couple of pens, I had to add a little bit of the Van Ness White Lightning to it. So it just didn't have, it just wasn't viscous enough for a couple of pens. And it just needed a little bit of White Lightning, the tiniest little bit. And it went great. But I like the Iron Gall. I think it's amazing. I think people should use Iron Gall ink anytime you're signing contracts and any of that stuff. I'm trying to find it. I had it years ago, but when I lost my computer, because my computer went down and I had to replace it. I had a news article on there where somebody had they bought their home, and this was a fountain pen user, and the fountain pen user, because they use fountain pens, saved them in trial. Because they had their favorite pen that they liked to use for important documents. And they had blue ink in their pen. But they did not want that. Whoever was doing the documents wanted it signed in black. So they couldn't use their favorite pen, and they had to sign with a ballpoint. Now, if you bought your home and were forced to sign with a ballpoint when you brought, this is the pen I want to use, and it was black ink and you brought this blue, So when it came up in court and their signature was in blue, they knew that was not the original document. Because they show up in court with the original document, right? And so then they were able to prove that basically the other side showed up and said, this is the original document. And they could prove it was a lie. And if you lied about the document being original, you've forged it. You made the signature blue. It was never blue, right? If you did that, what else are you now lying about? Like, your credibility is shot. And it was on the computer. I'm trying to find it again. But that would be an entire video where, because they had this is the pen I'm going to use to sign my mortgage. When everything went bad and they were going to lose their home, the fact that they were forced to sign with a ballpoint, they knew the paperwork wasn't real. Iron gall ink was a long way to go. A bit of a tangent, so we get our math jokes. So the thing about the iron gall ink is, if you sign with an iron with a true iron gall ink, okay, and 10 years later there is any discrepancy of that document and they pull it up and it's still blue, it's a lie. Because you know that was an iron gall ink and it's black now. So I think iron gall ink is amazing. And that's one of the reasons that some countries in certain documents still require you to use like the registrar's ink.
Yeah.
It ages into the paper over time. And I don't want to say you can't fake the aging. It's harder to fake the aging without affecting other areas. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I like some iron gall inks. I like the Rohr and Klingner Scabiosa is probably one of my favorites. Is it Platinum? The Platinum Classic inks are really nice. And then Quizzy did a lot of iron gall inks.
They did, but I didn't see theirs age. Like, I like their iron gall inks. But I didn't see them age to black like I was.
Yeah, they don't do that. They change color as they dry, and then that seems to be it. Well, Mike Wagner was asking since we mentioned bad black inks, was asking for an example of a bad black ink. If you wanted to answer that.
Recently, Noodler's Polar Black. It's aggressive. So that's why that would be a bad ink for me, regardless of color. But that one was bad for that. I've seen black inks, and I just can't think of them because why hold on to a bad one? Yeah. If I need to reference, that's what my videos are for. I will go look at them because I know what information's there, you know. But if a black ink shades, I don't like that. I don't like shading in black ink. I want it to be full black, solid lines the whole time, crisp edges, and that's it. They should be boring reviews.
Yeah.
Right? Usually it's more the I am enjoying this so much. That's probably more what's in the review than, because the ink is just the ink. So I think if it's a bad black ink, it's got to do with, I don't like if it looks a bit faded. I like it to be dark. It doesn't have to be the blackest of black. It just has to be a nice black. Solid lines. Don't give me shading. Don't be aggressive into the paper, right?
Yeah.
But I have seen, Noodler's Polar Black, as a recent one that was not good. It feathered. It is aggressive deep into the paper. Very permanent though. Mm-hmm. And apparently, Angry Rooster Creations has done the light fast testing on them, and they're coming up as light fast tests, as being light fast. So they put it in the window in the sun for long periods of time to see it fade, and it's not fading.
Okay.
So it does have that.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, Ink, because when I read that question, that was the exact one I thought of too. You know, there's a couple I don't like, but it's mostly because I don't like the shade of black. But
And there's the thing, right? My favorite black ink is not what I think is the best black ink.
mm-hmm.
You know, my favorite black ink is the Noodler's Heart of Darkness, but that's because, or sorry, Heart of Darkness, the Noodler's Dark Matter.
Yeah.
And that's because of the Manhattan Project and having Oppenheimer on the front, and it's got that green undertone, but it's not my favorite black, but it's my favorite black ink.
Yeah.
You know, and I've gone through I think I'm on my 4th bottle of that one for a black ink. So that can definitely happen where a black ink can have an undertone that you don't care for. So it's just not the right black for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I don't like the color of Roaring Klinger black or Califolio's black, but they're perfectly good inks. I just don't like them. I did that whole video on black inks, and I was surprised to find Lamy was the one that came out the best, but over time I've realized, no, I actually like Parker better, even though Lamy is objective, but well, according to all my tests, Lamy is the better ink. I still, for some reason, Parker Quink Black is the one I like.
Yeah, and you know what? I bet if you look, like, I bet there's an undertone that you care for. Like, do the chromatographies on them, and I bet it's I like this lean of it. You know.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, let's see what else we've got here. Oh yeah, ODE mentioned on that burnout topic. Sometimes real life gets in the way.
Oh yeah, real life's always more important. That's
very true.
You know, when my computer broke, I didn't make that. Like, I save up money for specific things. I had money to buy a new computer. The money I had was not for a new computer. So I wasn't taking, for instance, I wasn't taking my emergency car fund and going and buying a computer.
Right.
No, that stays waiting for if I have a problem with my car. I'll save up and buy a computer. So I had a couple months that I didn't have videos.
Yep.
If something's going on and you can't make videos, that's okay. They're not going to shut down YouTube.
Very true. Yeah, and Jeff said something similar, that some creators feel obligated to crank out content and becomes a job instead of something you enjoy.
Yeah, if I'm making more content, I'm enjoying making the content. And if I'm making less content, it doesn't mean I'm enjoying it less. It means this is the amount that I'm enjoying making right now. And yeah, and I can see where somebody can feel like they have an obligation.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's that real obligation there, which can sound a little bad. Probably would be nice, for instance, if someone's going to stop making videos. If somebody's been making videos for a while and they're going to stop making videos, I think it could be really good form to just do a really short video. Matt Armstrong did it.
Right.
Really short video. I'm done. I'm done. And that's okay. Right. I think that's much better than if somebody just stops. And the only reason I say that was if somebody just stops, there are people that are legitimately then concerned about you.
Yes.
And so they're going to, hey, are you okay? Because you all of a sudden disappeared on them. Right.
I actually had my parents email me to ask if I was okay, because I went, 2 weeks and didn't release a video.
Yeah. And so that's where I think, like, if the time comes where I say, and I'm done, even if the last video is sit down in front of the camera and go, I'm done, it's over, it's been fun, but this is it. And it could be that long.
Yeah.
right? But I do think if you've been around a while, that's the best form to do, just because people get used to you being a part of their life,
Hmm.
you know. But I don't think there should be any obligation. I will say, if you have I've seen you do this. If you have something's happened and you're not going to get pens in use done,
Hmm.
and then so you throw a community post out saying, "Yeah, it's not going to happen this week. Life's come up," or "It's going to happen. It's just happening late." I think if are very regular on when that happens and now you miss it,
Hmm.
I think it's good form, not necessary, right? Because you're not beholden to anybody.
Right.
I think it's good form to then say, "I'm not doing it," but don't feel obligated.
Yeah, that's true. One thing I do is if I'm traveling somewhere, I make sure I release videos so it looks like I'm at home. I got one other question here from Andrew Hoffman. He asked why Parker stopped making red ink. I don't know the answer to that. I know they used to make more colors. I did a video on that a number of years ago. I have a bottle of the red ink. I have 2 bottles of their green ink. I love their green ink. I think it's a great color. And they had some cartridges that were purple and brown and a couple others, and I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know either. All I can honestly think for any of it is we have to realize that fountain pens are not actually a market for any of these companies.
Yeah.
You know, Pelican, we hear Pelican and we think of their inks and pens.
Hmm.
They're a stationery company.
Hmm. Very true.
They're not just fountain pens and inks. They're big time in paper. So I could definitely see a company going, this is no longer breaking even. So we need to, especially as companies get bigger,
Yeah.
you know. So I could definitely see a company saying, this is no longer breaking even. We'll do it as long as it breaks even. People like it. It's not costing us money. Okay. But I can see the reason to stop. I don't know, but all I can think is that Parker, uh, they're not keeping the doors open because of their ink and because of their fountain pens.
Right. No, and Parker is actually now owned by oh shoot, is it Rubbermaid that owns them now?
Yeah, I think so. Like
Yeah.
Lami's owned by Safari,
Hmm.
or sorry, Lami's owned by Sailor Safari.
Right.
But yeah, so it's just one of those that I can totally see a company getting rid of.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think oh, here we go. Got a correction almost right away. Newell Brands owns Parker.
Okay.
That's funny. There's a really small town in South Dakota I go through on the way to the Black Hills called Newell. Probably no relation at all, but it's supposed to be the sheep capital of South Dakota. But anyway, I wanted to thank you. This is one of the first times I've ever done one of these videos, and so I want to thank you for being a guest on this. I wanted to thank everybody for joining in, and I got a few other creators I'm going to be getting in contact with about possibly doing something like this. So thank you to you for making this easy. And
No, it was great to be here. I think it basically went the way we talked. We
yeah,
talked,
I think that preparing ahead of time.
realize we had a conversation. I think that worked out really well, even though it wasn't exactly as planned. I think it definitely helped. This meant much longer than we expected.
Yeah, we were both thinking about an hour, and oh, if we can fill it.
Yeah, that's really what I thought. That, well, if we actually last an hour.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody later. And I don't know if you want, I can try to send you a copy of the video if you want to put it up on your channel.
I put a post saying that this was over, that, I was over here with the live, but I'm not worried about putting it up on my channel.
Okay.
Because it's your video.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining, and we'll see everybody later.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.